Welcome to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants, with me, Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA, and Joe Brianti of JLB Business Consulting. Each week we interview guest experts aimed at helping you grow your VA business. So sit back, grab a cuppa, and tune in for a fun-filled hour. Welcome, listeners, to the next episode of Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants. And Joe and I are here today. It's currently November the 16th as we record this episode, which will go out later, either later in 2020 or it might even be going out in 2021, which is an amazing thought, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, it's I think we're all going to be glad to see the back of 2020. Do you not think?
Well, I think so. It's really interesting. I was talking to my daughter yesterday, my daughter who lives in the States, and we were just talking about how she's had, her nanny just gave her notice. So that overnight, because in the States, they don't give you a month's notice. They just say, I'm not coming anymore. And she's now got Rosie, who's almost 2, and brand new baby, and she's about to go back to work, or she's just gone back to work. The nanny just said, I'm not coming back. She's not well. She's not coming back. So she was saying, you know, it's just another thing to add to the catalogue of woes that is 2020.
Yeah.
But she said, everybody's she said, don't you think everybody's going to be, I just thought it was priceless. Don't you think everybody's going to be really disappointed when they wake up on the 1st of January, 2021 and nothing's changed? And I thought, you know, we were both actually laughing about it because honestly, nothing's going to change just because the digit changes.
Yeah, no.
Yet. But
no.
We can but hope. We can but hope.
Yeah.
We are making progress. I think, you know, the world is making progress towards a way to allow us to live life. We just have to wait a little bit until that all falls into place. So that was my bit of a chuckle yesterday. And I thought, you know what, she's absolutely right.
Yeah, and in the meantime, all we can do is just keep going and, you know, make plans for when that point comes, when we can do all those things that we have taken for granted for so long.
Yeah, it's really interesting talking about that. So listeners, as you know, we moved, Shelley and David, my husband, we moved to Israel over a year ago now. And it is over a year now. Never in a million years thinking that we wouldn't be able to get on a plane to visit our kids because we've got our daughter in America and a son in the UK. And our son in the UK had a baby about 10 weeks ago now. I think he's about 10 or 12. He's between 10 and 12 weeks old. I've lost track of the weeks. Not it does make sense, doesn't it? Having lost track of the weeks, one week is the same as the next. And we haven't met this baby yet, and he's, you know, must be coming up to close to 4, you know, between 3 and 4 months old. We haven't met him yet, and that's really hard. So we're currently talking about we're on the case to find a location that we can both travel to, that's neutral, where neither of us have to quarantine when we get there. We're both prepared to quarantine when we get home. You know, but at least you're in your own home. So we're just looking at options of where we could perhaps both go on holiday, maybe over Christmas, and spend a few days together, at least getting to know the newest one, or the nearly newest one, because the newest one I've met.
Yeah.
So it is a bit much, isn't it?
I think those are the kinds of things that will mark out 2020 as being a year. And do you remember famously the Queen had her annus horribilis?
Yes.
I think we've all, to whatever degree, had that type of year where whether it's health, whether it's sad losses, whether it's business problems, or whether it's just the whole feeling of being locked up, lost, alone, and there are people, you know, who are not able to get out, and they've not had somebody sharing their home with them, and there have been all kinds of difficulties. So, you know, I can understand why, you know, linking into what you said about hoping that 2021 will be better, but it may well just be the same.
Yeah, I think it's going to be.
Hope it's fresh.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be it'll start to get better. I think the outlook will get better over the next
Yeah.
few months now that, you know, there's so much talk of vaccine, there are better treatments, there's more data. And I think that's really, really important, because now that they are amassing more data, they know what's working, they know what doesn't work, they're finding new treatments, and I think that's all going to help. And we're just going to have to learn to live with it like we live with the flu every year. But until they know how to treat it and how to prevent it as much as possible, it's just going to take time. But we are going to be talking today to the wonderful Stephanie Wium, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. And Stephanie is a designer. She started out, well, I don't know what she started out before she became a VA. We're going to find that out from her in just a few minutes. But she started out as a traditional VA and found that she absolutely hated it. And so ladies, listeners, gentlemen, there's hope for you if you don't enjoy what you do. Stephanie found what is her passion, and that's graphics. And she now works in creating beautiful social media graphics, and she has a niche. And I'm not going to tell you about that. I'm going to leave it to Stephanie to tell you all about that. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with her in just a few minutes. But in the meantime, Jo, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Gosh, I've done a couple of projects on some tech stuff. I have rebuilt somebody's active campaign system, set up the tags, started on their automations, a range of kind of things around that for them. And we've started plotting out their automations for memberships and a new mastermind program they're launching at the end of January. So we've started to map those out, and that's been my sort of background to the week. How about you?
That sounds quite an exciting project to be involved in. I have had my head down. I've been writing. I'm writing a book about Microsoft Teams, as I've no doubt mentioned before. I bore people a bit about what I'm doing. So I'm writing a book about Microsoft Teams. I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I can see the end. But then every time I think I can see the end, I think of something else that needs to be not added, because I've got my headlines and I know what's going in, but expanded. And you know, there are things that actually you do have to write quite a lot. So for example, on document collaboration, I've discovered some new stuff that just appeared recently, and because I hadn't been playing with it recently, I didn't notice it. So these things in the programs can actually sneak up from behind and appear, and it's something that's been requested. So I discovered there's a new option. You can now review a document inside Teams, and track changes is available. But I'm not going to talk about that now. Perhaps I'll talk about that at the end, after we've had our chat with Stephanie. Welcome, listeners, to today's episode of Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants. And our guest today is the very lovely Stephanie Wium. And I now know how to pronounce your surname properly, because I asked before. So that's great. And we were just chatting before we started, and Stephanie is actually in South Africa. So we have another international, multinational episode today with me in Israel. Stephanie is in South Africa, and Jo in West London. So another international flavor, just reinforcing the idea that VAs and people who help VAs can be anywhere. So I think that's a really good point. So Stephanie, do you want to tell our listeners about what's your background, and then how did you become a VA, and are you still a VA, or are you something else, or are you a VA of something? Go on, over to you.
That's a little bit confusing. So yes, I started my adult career really started in the armed forces here in South Africa very, very many years ago. I was in the police for 13 years. I then opted for voluntary redundancy, and I then went on and did myself for a while, and I slowly but surely worked myself into administrative roles, where I ended up being an executive assistant for C-suite level execs for the last couple of years in formal employment. Then last year, March, I launched myself as a generalist virtual assistant. Now, if you know nothing about marketing, and you launch yourself, and suddenly you find yourself thrown in the deep end. Everybody's advice is to niche down and keep niching down. And I didn't follow that advice. So for me, in my mind, I was a horrible virtual assistant because I didn't know how to do all of this. So I pivoted into design after I stumbled across Canva quite accidentally. So there are still clients that I'm a virtual assistant to, but for the most part, I help virtual assistants as well as coaches with design for social media, for their social media platforms.
That's phenomenal, because so many of us have to be out there and present our stuff or our words of wisdom in a visually appealing way. And I've seen your work, it's stunning. And I also love the idea about this kind of way of starting out as doing everything and then eventually working out what it is that gives you joy, really. Jo knows a bit about that, don't you, Jo?
Yes. Sadly, Canva is not in my sphere of joy, though, Stephanie. So, yeah, I started out just like you, very generalist, and now I'm niching down into GDPR and compliance work, which is as far removed from the kind of amazing graphics that you create. It just, yeah.
So you said you help VAs, and I think it's coaches, isn't it, mainly that you help, Stephanie? So how does a brief work? I mean, if I wanted you to do stuff for tomorrow's VA, what would I need to give you? Would you come up with the words and the images, or just the images?
Ideally, yes, I will only do the images.
Okay.
You know, nobody knows your business better than you. So you're better able to come up with the words that need to accompany your post, because at the end of the day, a visual is not supposed to have too many words on. It can be a directory type of words directing you to a post or to take a specific action. But my job mainly is just to come up with the visuals that is going to be complementary to the post that you're going to be putting out there on social media.
Okay, that sounds quite straightforward. And how do you said you found Canva by accident? How did that happen? Tell us about that happy accident.
It was indeed a very happy accident. I was scrolling through, where was it? I think it was on Amanda's VACT Facebook group. And someone had mentioned Canva, and me being so inquisitive, I needed to know what Canva was. And I went and explored it and researched it. And I thought to myself, I can do this. Never mind the fact that I was absolutely horribly bad in the beginning. But, you know, as with all things, as you get to know something, you get better at it. And now I'm quite happily marketing myself as a Canva creative designer.
That's phenomenal. I mean, I use Canva quite a lot myself, but I'm not a naturally visual person. So I'm okay if I know kind of the look I'm going for, or if somebody's given me a template to work on. But coming up with something completely new really flummoxes me.
Yeah.
So I'm very much in awe of anybody that can design things and make them look beautiful. So, for example, I can teach anybody how to use PowerPoint and how to use PowerPoint to create beautiful looking graphics, but I need to have guidance of what the end needs to look like. Then I can teach you how to create it. I can't come up with the end result. So I think that's a real talent. It's a real talent to be able to do that.
It starts off with literally a blank canvas in front of you, as you would on PowerPoint. And so you start building elements in, and you put your verbiage in there, and you decide on what eventually looks good. And at the end of the day, as with PowerPoint, because we've all been killed by PowerPoint before, less is more. And so you put in and you take out and you change and you slant it, and use depth perception and various options available to you. So, you know, you can play around, and that's how I play around. And so when a client comes to me and they say to me, I want something, the first thing I say is which platform, because size matters.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let anybody tell me that size does not matter. So which platform is it going to? And what is, at the end of the day, what is the objective of the image? So if I know it's just to give information, you can literally give information in any way that you can or want to on a design, and everything else sort of like just falls into place. And what sort of background imagery do you want? Do you have a product that you want to showcase? Do you want to put your own face on there, for argument's sake? Do you want to put your logo on there? So we all start with something.
Yeah.
So whilst I say, yes, we start with a blank canvas, we all still start with something.
Yeah.
And we build from there.
Yeah. So when you said that you started out being a generalist virtual assistant, because this is the bit that I think our listeners will be really interested in,
Yeah.
is how you do niche down, because everybody knows, and it's said the N word becomes very bandied about a lot, but it really is super important, because, you know, when you're marketing, you need to know who you're talking to. So as much as what you love doing, so that there's two elements to it, aren't there? They're being able to get your message out there succinctly, and also loving what you do. So when you started out as a generalist VA, how did you go about niching? I mean, I know you said you came across Canva, but it can't have been an overnight decision to decide to go just down the design route.
No, it certainly wasn't an overnight decision. I wanted to be able to take over someone's specific administrative requirement and work on that and give them a presentable document, email, whatever the case may be at the end of the day. So I was going to be purely admin, not email, not all those other things that VAs do, all the research and that sort of thing. That did not ring my bell at all. And you know, and as I said, it starts with marketing. And if you don't know where it is that you're going to be able to find the most joy, as well as being profitable, as well as being able to give value to the person. So there's that little bit of a triangle.
Yeah.
And if you don't have all sides the same size, then, you know, it sort of becomes, well, I've got to find something where my joy is. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to be something that I'm not enjoying. And I ended up not enjoying admin, but there are still people, as I said, who I do admin for. So I still enjoy admin to a certain degree, just not that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like anything, isn't it? The things that you don't like, you can do them a little bit, as long as it doesn't become your whole life.
Yeah.
And then you spend your whole time feeling, I don't want to do this. Does that resonate with you at all, Joe? What's your kind of take on that?
It does, because when you go through the process of niching, or you find your groove of what you really, really love, you may have existing clients that you really, really love working with, who the work you do for them is not necessarily in your niche, but you just enjoy working with them. So those tasks don't feel onerous. So you keep those on. And then you've got those odd tasks that they're very easy. It could be a spreadsheet. It could be whatever it is that's in your world. And those are fundamental pieces of work that keep money coming through while you go through that process of niching and finding the new clients that will work with you on the service packages that are bringing you joy. Because we do have to remember, we're all business owners, and it's you know, the idea of going into a niche is great, but you still have to pay your bills. So be prepared for the fact that there is a transition. And I'm sure you would have found that, Stephanie, you haven't kind of gone all the way from one thing to another without kind of a balance where it's gone from 100% to sort of 60, 50, 40, and then, you know, the balance has gone the other way, where you're only perhaps doing 10 or 20% of stuff that's ticking you over and 80% of the stuff that you love.
Absolutely. The transition wasn't easy. You know, when I decided that I'm now going to be designing instead of just doing admin, I still had to obviously pay the bills, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to keep a roof over your head and keep those wolves at bay. So the transition was over a period of time. But once I've made the transition, and yes, the clients that I work with, I would be typing out a document for one, I would be setting up a spreadsheet for another. I helped someone else set up her database and sending emails on her behalf via the database to her clients. So it's varied. So it's still a little bit generalist in that regard, but it's certainly different. I mean, I advised the client just over the weekend itself on, well, not before, just before the weekend, on a funnel for his lead magnet, going in, you know, building his email base, and then obviously building clients on that. So, you know, so you help your clients in any way that they need, they need assistance with, keeping your niche at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important point. Really, really important point. So what do you love most about the design process?
I think the fact that I'm able to visually and creatively give outing to myself. So my own visuals range from bizarre to educational to just weird, you know. I can certainly throw a lot of stuff on a canvas and hope it turns out all right, but I can visually express myself, and that's really what I enjoy about working on Canva, because that is my platform of choice, is that I can put various elements together and I can actually make the visual tell the story in its own, on its own, even if I did have very little written by way of verbiage in the post itself.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. That really is phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Yeah. So do you how do you work? Do you offer, do you work, because we have this, we talk to lots of people about packages, hours, time, charging. I'm not asking you for your rates, but how do you figure that out? And do you say, well, you could, because I know I've seen your introductory offer at the beginning, over, I can't remember, it wasn't that long ago, and you were offering so many images for such and such, which obviously is not sustainable, because that was just to presumably was just to launch you. But so how do you package your services up?
I started out by charging per design. I don't work by the hour, because some designs do take longer than others, and I can't be charging a specific hourly amount where something is going to be very quick and easy to do within 15 minutes, and I bill a client at a full hourly rate. That just ethically that just doesn't sit with me. So I started charging by the design itself. I still have packages available that go by number of designs. And then there are certainly larger offers as well, where I would take over, especially for those who are wanting to do a sprint challenge or a virtual workshop, taking care of all of their visual content for that specific offering, and doing all of that for a set amount of money. I help clients on an hourly basis with recorded Zoom calls, showing them how to lay out a design, how to start a design. So, you know, as I'm developing in my own self, I develop new products, and they are always either product or project based. So there's never an hourly rate or a breakdown where, you know, I did 15 minutes of a design and you're going to be paying me 30 minutes or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, because it must be so difficult. Like, you know, some things do take next to no time, and then you do, if you know, you ethically you feel, oh, I can't charge all that for that.
Yeah.
But a project base, or I like that idea of packages. So where do you find your clients, or where do they find you? How do you acquire them?
I am most active over on LinkedIn. That is my platform of choice. Most of my clients come from LinkedIn, but I've now started being a little bit more active on Facebook as well as over on Instagram. I have a presence on Twitter, but it's not really where I really want to be. I just don't get the couple of lines of text, and then you have to do it prolifically throughout the day in order to show some sort of a presence. Whereas over on LinkedIn, we all know LinkedIn is a professional networking site, and it just works for me better that way than anywhere else.
Yeah, I follow you on LinkedIn, and your stuff, you know, what you put out is great. I also follow you on Instagram, you know, and your Instagram presence is also, you know, your images are phenomenal, and that's important because it's a visual medium where people can find you. Are you on Pinterest?
I am on Pinterest. I have a couple of boards over on Pinterest, but we all know that Pinterest is a search engine. So, you know, it's not so much a social media platform as such. However, Pinterest is obviously also very visual. So everything that you put on there has to be visually appealing. Otherwise, you're going to be losing your touch altogether.
Yeah. No, Pinterest is a great search engine for anything visual, and it's a great one to send traffic to your website, for example. It really is, because somebody will find your design, and if your design is linked to, for example, all of my blog posts have 2 Pinterest images attached to them in different places, and one of them gets pinned automatically when I promote the blog post the first time, and it means that on my blog board, all those pins link back to my website. So as long as the images are good, which my VA does for me, and you know, I'm very happy with what she does. So it is a great search engine, and traffic director, traffic controller, if you like. It's a good place to be, because lots of people plan things using Pinterest. They will go to Pinterest and they'll create boards with all the things they like. So when I was redoing my office, I had a board with all sorts of office designs on it. And the other thing that Pinterest helps with is if you share other people's, they then share yours. So it kind of, it's a great visual platform to be on.
Yes.
To be on. So Jo, have you got any other questions for Stephanie?
Well, I've been and had a little look at Stephanie's Insta, and I am blown away by your images. I'm not a design person. I'm probably further down the line than Shelley when it comes to design. My Canva feed is just a square box. That's it, because that's as much as I can do. But yours are amazing. You've got some fabulous graphics on there. So I'm going to be taking much more interest and having a look to get some ideas.
You're more than welcome to. You're more than welcome to.
So Stephanie, if there are VAs out there who would need some help with that, can you help other VAs with that? So could you teach them how to do it? Or maybe they could outsource graphics to you. Is that a service that you offer?
Both of those that you have just mentioned, and I'm happy to say, and you know, put it out there, I am launching a program specifically aimed at virtual assistants who are now having to do design for their clients as well as for themselves, who are either starting out on Canva or who have already journeyed on Canva to take themselves the next level. So there's that video tutorial program that I'm busy with at the moment. And then, yes, they can certainly outsource their clients. I can certainly collaborate with them for the benefit of the clients. You know, I would bill them and they would on-bill it to the client. And, you know, we help one another that way.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'm actually really a virtual assistant myself still at heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you just have a specific skill set that you employ. That's really cool to know that you're going to have a course on how to use Canva. And I'm going to schedule a chat with you separate to this because it's kind of sparked an idea in my mind of something. So I think we'll draw to a close there. All of Stephanie's contact details, listeners, will be on the webpage that goes with this episode, which is going out later in the year. We batch record, as we've said before. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on. It's fascinating. I know that our listeners love hearing people's stories about how they got to where they got to. And lots of VAs who start out doing one thing end up doing something totally different. And that's really interesting.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Welcome back, listeners. Wasn't that fascinating hearing how Stephanie went from being in the armed forces to being an executive assistant for C-suite people, and then to being what she termed a generalist virtual assistant, to now being still a general virtual assistant, but niching down into that design skills area. And I think that's really very cool. What do you think, Jen?
Oh, absolutely. You know, as I said in the discussion, design just doesn't sit with me at all. A blank page is a blank page, and it's going to have a spreadsheet or it's going to have a plan. And I admire her tremendously. Her graphics are amazing. So it again reiterates the point that we've made so many times in this podcast. How many different and varied skills do we have in our VA industry and community that we can all call on? And isn't it wonderful that we're not all designers or spreadsheet lovers or anything else, you know?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. And as I've said before, one of the things I love about the VA industry, or my experience of it, is collaboration, not competition. And Stephanie, I think, is a prime example of that. Thinking about you, actually, and your aversion to design.
Yes.
I don't think that's too strong a word for it, is it?
No, it's not. It's not.
So, you know, I could come to you tomorrow as an existing client and say, Joe, I love working with you. Can you do this design for me? Instead of you kind of saying, oh, no, I can't do that, you can say, well, I can't do it, but somebody in my team can, and we can do it. And I think that is invaluable. We all need other people to shore up the gaps in our own skills where we have them. So I think that was fantastic. So we were talking there a lot about Canva because that is Stephanie's medium of choice. And I know you don't particularly like it. I do spend quite a lot of time in Canva. I do my podcast graphics there. So when you see the graphics to promote the podcast, whether it's the ones with virtual Veronica in there or whether it's the one with how many episodes we've got, those are all done in Canva. And it as long as I can find a design that looks close to what I think will look good, I know how to change the colors, and it's branded, and how to upload images, and it's quite easy to do. But what I loved that Stephanie mentioned there, one of the things I really liked was her idea of charging for a number of designs or by design rather than by the hour, which I think is really good, because sometimes a project price is just so much easier to understand than an hourly one, because the client might not know how many hours it takes to produce X, whereas if you say, well, it's going to cost you this much to get that solution, that's a whole different ballgame. Then if you do it in 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. It's the value to the client. So do you price like that? Let's talk about pricing. Do you price like that?
I have a blend. I have a couple of associate roles that I do for other VAs, and I put in a timesheet based on the number of hours I do. But other than that, in my own business, I very much am package. I have some fixed packages with set prices, And then if I'm quoting for a piece of work, so for instance, today I've got a quote for MemberPress setup. So I've evaluated all the different elements within that. I know roughly how much time it's going to take me dependent upon the volume of content, and I will give a fixed price one-off, and then it doesn't matter whether it takes me 2 hours or 20 hours, the client will just pay that fixed cost.
Yeah, I work very much the same way. As trainers, we don't tend to do time. Well, it is kind of time for money, but it's course for money. So a course might be time-based. So if it's a live training, let's say that you want to have a one-to-one session with me, that's normally a 90-minute session, because to be honest, doing things virtually 90 minutes is probably enough. And you can actually get through a lot of learning in 90 minutes as well. So we do a 90 minutes, and that's a price for the time, really. But once you start adding more people in, then that price obviously goes up. And then all my online courses are fixed prices for the course. Some of them, hold my hands up, I've only got half an hour's worth of content, and it's the same price as another course that's got 3 hours of content. But the value, the outcome is the same. So whether you're going to sit there for half an hour or for 3 hours, at the end of the day, you're going to solve a problem. So I've decided those are the prices. I'm not going to price the one that's only half an hour's content lower because it's only half an hour's content, because the content is really valuable. And I think that's something, sometimes we can get lost in overthinking pricing, can't we? And value, and thinking, they're not going to want to pay that much, or I can't make it too expensive, or am I actually undercharging? So
one of the sorry, Shelley, one of the things that I was going to say on that, it is a bit, in a way, hit and miss. When you send out a quote with a price, and there have been situations in the past where I've given a price and the clients come back and said, that's a bit out of my budget. And I said, okay, so what can we do within your budget? And then we've looked at how we can reduce the price and add value in a different way.
Yeah.
Or can we split the job into a phased payment? Can we split the job into phased work? It doesn't have to, when the client first comes back and says that's a bit outside of my budget, it doesn't always have to be that final no, does it?
No, absolutely. And I think that's also key. Often, certainly in training, when you quote, you might include extras. So you might include workbooks, you might include travel time. I don't know, there's lots of things you might add on. And if a client comes back and says, well, we don't really want to pay that much, then it's a case of, okay, well, this is for the basic delivery and this is for the extra. So then you start taking stuff out, or as you say, do a payment plan or something. And I think it's quite easy, and I think we all do it as business owners. We get bogged down into worrying about pricing, and at the end of the day, if you're providing a solution for somebody, that's invaluable, and people will pay for that. So I think that's enough of us waffling away today, and it's been another great episode, and thank you for listening, listeners. As ever, I'm Shelley at tomorrowsva.com. Joe is jlbbusinessconsulting.co.uk. Go to the webpage, Virtually Amazing, on Facebook at Virtually Amazing. You can find the links to the podcast on the Tomorrow's VA site podcast homepage. And do let us know who you want to hear from, or even if you would like to be a guest on a future episode. We want to promote you all and give you all an amazing voice, because as virtual assistants, you all do amazing things. Until next week, we'll see you soon. You've been listening to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with Shelley Fishel and Joe Brianti. We look forward to being with you again next week, where we'll have another awesomely amazing guest expert for you. See you then.